I wanted a place that would have direct access to nature and to be able to essentially wake up in the morning and have a cup of coffee and then go for a hike with the dog. I paid a lot of attention to what was coming up in the real estate market and knowing what prices were fair and what prices were inflated. And then when this particular property came up, a place that had water, that had an existing structure, that was within an hour of my daughter's school, it was clear that it was an excellent property and had all the characteristics that we were looking for. And here on the edge of the property is a natural spring that comes out from the hillside that's beautifully fresh water that's running into our little creek here. I use this Coleman propane stove that has 2 burners. I end up heating a lot of water for coffee and tea, and then I end up eating a lot of soups. And then when my daughter's here, we have bacon and eggs and pancakes and s'mores and kind of good camping food. But I make it into town frequently enough to go to the grocery store that we eat pretty well up here. So in addition to the propane stove, the other major system in the kitchen is the water and sink. And this is an extremely simple setup where I bring in water in these jugs that have just a faucet built in. And then this is a industrial sink that I bought at the Habitat for Humanity Restore. And both of these sinks just drain into a 5-gallon bucket. And so that keeps the plumbing system very simple, and when the bucket gets a bit full, I take it out and dump it somewhere where plants will enjoy the water. There's 2 electrical setups. One of them is a 12-volt battery that is powered by, right now, 1 solar panel. That the solar panel connects to a charge controller that connects to the 12-volt battery. And it's a marine or camper 12-volt battery that is good at being able to maintain a charge with a kind of a slow trickle. These wires feed into the loft inside where the battery is with the charge controller and the inverter. And when I want to drop power off of that battery, I turn on the inverter and then plug into that with any of my devices. So this is our Starlink internet receiver. It is perfectly fast, but there's issues with it cutting out because of the obstructions from the trees. It's kind of a narrow window of sky that it has access to the satellites. One of the main conceptual challenges has been how to do construction of the house and restore the house in a way that doesn't draw too much attention from the county authorities and code enforcement. And so being able to know exactly what the code is, to be able to stay within code without having to go through a permitting process, was something that has taken a lot of thought. If I were to make big enough changes, so if I were to change the footprint of the house or the structure of the roof, that would be enough that if someone were to notice that a change had been made, either because they came through or they can see from aerial photographs, they could end up saying, oh, this is something you needed a permit for. And so essentially my strategy has been, all the construction that I've done has been on a small enough scale that it doesn't require a permitting process. The other main challenge that I've faced is managing the water and moisture in the cabin. And so because the cabin essentially was built right into the earth, there's been a lot of moisture and rot that has undermined the structure. And so figuring out how to not only repair the structure but also do things that minimize the amount of water that's coming in and affecting the woodwork or affecting the floors has been a major challenge, especially since the cabin is set up against a hillside where the runoff from the snow and rain comes straight down basically into the house. One of the main things has been to dig sizable trenches outside the house, coming in from outside before it reaches the house and diverts it downhill. And then making sure that all of the wooden structures that I've put in aren't in direct contact with the earth or any other permeable surface that could end up getting it wet. I think we had quite a bit more ambitious plans at first that were less tied to the reality of the particular structure in the particular context. Build, for example, a greenhouse in the first year, but ran into issues with water getting into the house, and that was something that needed to be done first. And then we found out that extending the structure would be something that would bring us into trouble with code enforcement, and so we ended up both needing to simplify our plans but also adapt to exactly what the cabin actually needed to have done to it rather than what dreams we came to it with. So one of the things that really inspired me to start this project was having lived and worked in a place called Tuva and in Mongolia, in Siberia. And so it's a place where folks are already living off-grid all the time, either in yurts or in winter cabins. And when I had the chance to buy essentially a winter cabin here in the US, I was inspired to be able to do something that replicated a lot of what I had seen in Asia in terms of being able to live off-grid and essentially have a very minimalist setup in terms of infrastructure, but having everything you actually need. I think the advice that I'd give somebody that wants to be living off-grid is to find your niche. Essentially, if you can find the place or the set of places that really work well for your lifestyle, then you can really live a good life. I think a lot of the difficulty comes when, for example, living nomadically or camping, if one doesn't have access to good sites, then you end up spending a lot of time in kind of a transient state in parking lots or in town. But if you can find places that you can occupy that have all of the benefits of living off-grid, but that also aren't too onerous, I think that's a lot of the secret. And when I eventually transitioned from living more nomadically to having a particular spot in the mountains, that then gave me an opportunity to really invest in the place and turn it into something where I wanted to live long term. I am not currently prepared for the winter, but I have plans to be prepared for the winter. So it's going to be really important to complete the envelope of the house, which essentially means sealing it in with tar paper and then insulating it on the inside so that we can hold a nice warm pocket of air in here when we heat the place up with the wood stove.